Hi, welcome. It's the 3rd of September and we are 8 days away from the anniversary of 9/11 that the general, the 3-star general in America warns us of all so much that, to the point where he states he would rather there be, at the present time, a DEFCON 1 status of alert. But let's look at this story. The US prepares drill in western Ukraine for mid-September. Could you believe it? The Ukraine is already engaged in civil war in the country with its own rebels and its government that was forced in by, us Western countries. And America want to go and practice drills in a conflict zone. It isn't just the Americans. It states here, the US and its allies are preparing to stage a military exercise in the western Ukraine close to the Polish border in mid-September. The joint drills will involve over 1,000 troops from the US and Europe as well as from the Ukraine. There are Russian troops already on the ground in eastern Ukraine. You've got rebel fighters in the eastern Ukraine which are encircling Ukrainian army at this present moment, and now we're throwing in NATO, the US and more into this. We should be trying to alleviate this situation, not increase and escalate this situation. But this is what we're seeing, guys. I mean, they are going to be in the Ukraine. The annual exercise will take place in Yavari, I can't pronounce that, training centre in the city of Lvov. Right, let's go and have a look at where that city is on Google Earth. And here it is on the map. Poland, the Ukraine, the Ukrainian border, and here's Lviv. And this is where those drills are going to be taking place mid-September in a conflict zone. I can't believe it. Who is insensitive enough to carry out drills in a real conflict zone, guys? And the last thing you want to do, if Russian troops are in there, is stick US troops in the same territory where a real battle is going on. This is just completely insensitive. It shows how much these people are right for the positions at which they hold, because I can't believe that anyone would risk the ignition of putting Western troops in a conflict zone where Russian troops and the Ukraine are already at war. Incredible. But that's not the way they see it. You see, this operation, which is called Rapid Trident 2004, they see it as it is designed to promote regional stability and security and strengthen partnerships. I just don't believe that. Can you believe that, guys? That they feel by putting more guns in a conflict zone provides regional stability. Incredible. I mean, we've got the NATO summit this week in the United Kingdom in Wales, and this is what NATO will be planning as those talks go on. You can read the title yourself. NATO planning rapid deployment force of 10,000 troops to counter Russia. That's why they're going in the west of Ukraine. The forces will be in there on the ground mid-September, guys. And you can see for yourself, it's to counter Russia. Russia's got their troops in on the west. We're going in the east, and at some point we'll exchange with each other. That's if we're not already being misled about this, and this is already taking place. This is leading to a third world war, guys. And it's like I said, I'm not a war strategist, but why would you, if you was Russia, waste your equipment on a force that you cannot beat? Wouldn't it make sense to use those nuclear deterrent weapons in a first strike um, plan, and then whatever equipment you still have, use afterwards. It just doesn't make sense to use your military assets up first, knowing that you're going to lose them, and then fall back on your nuclear arms. And I think this is what Putin is telling NATO at the moment, by you need to think one step ahead, because if you engage with Russia, there will be not just the Ukrainians dead in the streets, but there will be people all over this world dead in the streets. It'll wreck the world. But they are steaming towards it. I don't see anything showing a change of course. In fact, it is building up, and it's building up to take part at some point, possibly this month. There's also, putting this aside, a lot of history with Russia, NATO and the United States, and I'm talking specifically with regards to this missile defence system. The United States and Europe were telling Russia that this missile defence system was in case of Iran developing, the ability to strike countries in the, that was part of NATO and the United States. Russia asked to participate with them, with the missile defence system in that instance, and Russia was not allowed to, basically. Now this looks like NATO have all along been preparing against some future strike against Russia, and in doing so, that peace period of time since the 80s till now has been nothing more than a smokescreen that would enable NATO to move onto Russia's borders, as it has done and as it is increasingly doing, and it has a missile defence system now against Russia, and it was never intended from the Russian standpoint of view for the missile system to be protecting NATO against Russia. There's a lot going on right now, guys, and if you're not concerned about it, then I think you're out of touch with what is going on. I'm not trying to fear people. I'm just saying that I'm concerned, and I think that you guys should be. Right now there shouldn't be 20,000 people going down to this NATO summit meeting in Wales in the United Kingdom this week. It should be a formidable amount of people. It should be in the millions. That's what should be going down there, and it should send a message to NATO that we are sick and tired of this warmongering that you are doing, because at the end of the day, it's civilians that get caught up in the crossfire. We've seen it in the Ukraine, we've seen it in Iraq. Over 1 million people died in that Iraq war. Women, children, as well as soldiers. And it's still ongoing today. And we went there in the pretext that they had weapons of mass destruction. Do you remember Colin Powell showing us that little vial of anthrax, saying that if he was to take the lid off, everyone in this room would die? They are developing weapons of mass destruction, and they intend to use them on westernised democracies. That's a load of bullshit, and we all know that. They never found any weapons of mass destruction. It was on the back of 9/11 that America and NATO went to war as a joint coalition to remove Saddam Hussein. And since we have done that, we have left the country in ruins, because there's even fighting there today. Same with Libya, when America falsely went into Libya and bombed it and helped those rebels overthrow Gaddafi. And we're doing it again in the Ukraine. The meddling from the CIA, installing their own government over there, has left the Ukraine now in ruins, which has now drawn in Russia and now NATO are going in themselves. If this escalates to a war with Russia and Russia's allies, which it will do, I can see, guys, because the trend's pointing that way. You know, all this information that now is starting to escalate daily and will continue after this summit meeting this week, it will gradually lead us down the path of a world war. How many more countries need to be engaged in war for it to be a world war? This is the third world war, which will be a highly technologically advanced war. And inevitably, when you have two of the large stockpilists of nuclear arms in the world, if one of them gets defeated, they are left with no other alternative but to launch. And I've said this before, you'd only need a small amount or a small escalation, you know, or a small deployment of nuclear arms to cause a nuclear winter over the northern hemisphere of this planet. Temperatures will plummet, and that is the least you have to worry about. That's just the initial, you know, immediate changes which you will notice. That is, if you are not caught up in the blast. You then have to worry about the fact that the ground, the water and everything is contaminated for 400 and odd thousand years. These people need to be controlled by the public of these countries that are part of NATO and the United States. We need to rein them back in, because these sociopaths are going to kill millions and millions of people if they continue in their trend in which they are meddling right now in the Ukraine. We should have nothing at all to do with it. We should be encouraging peace in that country, not putting more weapons in on the ground. Just one other thing before I end this upload, guys. 11 Libyan jetliners are missing. Can you believe that? You would think with MH17, MH370 that they'd be keeping more tabs on where these aircrafts are taking off from, where they're landing. You'd think they'd have satellite information of where these aircraft are right now. But is this leading to another 9/11 style attack, where 11 Libyan jetliners have gone missing and will resurface at some point in suicide bombing attacks using jetliners as they did in 9/11? Is this what that 3-star general is talking about would be going on at this point in time? Again, this is in and around the anniversary of 9/11, and there are significantly, or I find it consequently that there are 11 aircraft as well that have gone missing. Now, this NATO summit is not only going to be protected by 10,000 police officers, as well as other NATO equipment, such as the 7 battleships, NATO battleships, that will be in Newport and on the shores of Cardigan. I mean, is this part of that defence system where we might see a false flag of the event where aircraft possibly are making their way towards the NATO summit, and they have already foreseen this, already planned this, and that's what those ships are there for, to take out these aircraft as they get closer to the summit meeting, of where around 30 world leaders of members of NATO will be meeting this week. You just got to keep your eyes and ears open, guys, at this moment. There are a lot of people that are suggesting this is a time of high level security, and just be on guard, because it's always us public that get caught up in this, never these people in these suits that shouldn't. I mean, this is it. They shouldn't have the jobs. Then they're not proving, that they deserve the jobs or that they can carry out these jobs, correctly. Especially when, they think it's the best strategy to put United States troops and NATO troops in on the ground in the Ukraine, in a war-torn country already, where Russian troops are believed to already be there. Amazing. If you could get off this world right now, guys, would you? If there was another world to go to, would you want to go there? I would. As usual, guys, I think we are seeing the momentum creep slowly towards a third world war. And isn't it coincidental that back in 1938 there was a recession, that even experts are saying was not as bad as the one that we are in today. The economic experts say that this is a worse depression than 1938 bomb. What recovered us from the war, from that depression, was the Second World War, and here we are, on the doorway of another war taking place. It's absolutely a horrible time to be living. Not only is there no jobs, there's no money, there's no prospects, there doesn't seem to be any future. Our governments don't seem to care. Over here in the UK, they're closing down hospitals. I know they've done this in the United States, but is it because we've borrowed money off the IMF? Because this seems to be a trend that, what happens to countries that lend money off the International Monetary Fund. It's like someone goes in and looks at the books and says, well, if we make cutbacks here, here and here, you can pay a loan off which will help quantitise your economy. Is this where the QE2 money actually comes from, the IMF? Because if so, we can see what their plan is, and that is to strip back all public assets and services to a bare minimum so that they can get the interest on the loan. And at the same time waste billions of pounds on military hardware and NATO summit meetings. £50 million the securities cost the UK to host this. You're telling me they don't have Skype? Eh? They can't do this from their own countries and save the burden of such meetings in other people's countries. It's absolutely hysterical what's taking place in Wales right now. 10 miles of fencing has been erected around that meeting spot. As always, guys, I'll say bye for now.